Welcome to our show. I'm Lana Kay, and we have an extremely important topic planned for today's show, and we have an expert with us to explain that. Today, we'll be talking about suicide prevention, and here with us is our guest, Larry Mcnabb.
Well, thank you very much, Lana Kay, for inviting me to be on your show. I also thank you for being a part of our QPR Gatekeeper training back in October
Yes,
so we could prepare for this.
yes, that's because of that. That's why you're here today, Larry. And I want Larry to tell, well, first of all, let me tell you this. Larry is the vice chairman of Kentucky Suicide Prevention Group. So, as I said, he is an expert, and today he'll be discussing a great organization. It's called QPR Gatekeepers, and I want him to tell us what is QPR Gatekeepers, Larry.
QPR Gatekeeper is QPR Institute is the one that developed it out of Seattle, Washington. And Dr. Paul Quinnett is the gentleman that started that institute. And what he realized is over the years, so many people tried to address suicide prevention, but there just wasn't the training that was involved that was needed to help individuals that want to reach out to those that are hurting, that are struggling in their life, and just said, I need help. So he developed this plan, this type of a program called Question, Persuade, and Refer, which is the Gatekeeper program. And with that, it's a simple formula with just learning how to ask the right questions, how to persuade someone to get that help, and then refer them to the right resources so they can get help immediately if needed. So that's a little bit about that program and just equipping those that go through the training.
Okay, Larry, in some of your literature that you share with me, recognize the warning signs of suicide, know how to offer hope, and know how to get help and save a life. This is the goal of the QPR program. So I attended this program. It was wonderful. Larry facilitates this. He will facilitate for your organization. He'll tell you all about that more toward the end of our show. But so many myths, Larry pretty much knocked down right away. I know you've all heard things like if they're talking about it, they're not going to do it. And as Larry will discuss later in the things to watch for, that is a myth. So, Larry, you've had a dark period in your own life.
I have.
And does this give you more insight into helping individuals struggling, would you say?
It does, and it gives me really an inside track to so many people that are dealing with mental health disorders. And the number one cause for individuals to attempt suicide or complete suicide has been a diagnosed or undiagnosed depression. That's 75% of all of the cases with suicide. So when you look at that, you're saying 90% is from a mental health disorder of some type. So that has given me an insight to say the people that I'm reaching out to, I know where they're coming from when they are talking about hurting and being suicidal because I've been there during my severe depression, general anxiety, and panic attacks. There was times when I felt very dark and cold. I didn't even recognize that person in the mirror anymore. So that is something that has really helped me, I think, to be so passionate about saying we need to make sure everybody that we can reach with this training has a chance to do that. And where it's free, just having that availability to come out and do the training is all we ask is just make that commitment to say 15 minutes talking to someone that's hurting could make a life-changing difference.
And let them know that this is going to pass. You know, how you're feeling right now is not forever. And so, Larry, speak to us about Kentucky's suicide rate. It's pretty high.
It is. Kentucky is, right now, they're ranked number 18th in the nation for the suicide rate. In 2014, which is the most current statistics that we have on suicide, Kentucky had 727 suicides. But when you take in consideration all the attempts that go along with those completed suicides, there are so many people that have attempted suicide, and many of them we never even know about because they may not have needed medical attention. So it is overwhelming to look at some of the numbers, and especially with our young people, to realize how many young people out there today in junior high, high school, that are really struggling in life, and they don't know another way out of it unless somebody is willing to reach out to them and help them.
So much can go wrong now in high school bullying, the social media thing, telling lies about people. They haven't had life experience enough to not take that so deeply. As an adult, could pass that off better. I feel sorry for our young people today with all the problems that go on. Now, Larry, many people do not act on their suspicion that the person that the person they know may be struggling. Now, because they just don't know how to act on it. They need the QPR.
They do need some tools to help assure them that they know what they're doing. I think the one thing we have to realize is that we're the only animals on earth as human beings that don't follow through on their instinct. And I think that's something that is very important for us to realize, that a lot of times our gut instincts tells us this person could be suicidal and they need help. And I think with going through a QPR training, it's an hour to a couple of hours of training, and it gives you a chance to really say, how can I reach out to that person that I know could be in trouble and could be at risk of taking his or her life? And that's what QPR is all about, teaching you a basic understanding of what to do and just being able to utilize that when you need it.
It's so worthwhile. And that QPR, Larry, question,
persuade, and refer. And each one of those steps is so important. How do you ask that question when you feel like someone is suicidal? How do you ask that question? The best way to do it is just be very upfront and direct and say, are you thinking about suicide? Or maybe saying, some people that are as depressed as you seem to be, sometimes think about suicide. I'm wondering, are you thinking about suicide? So
right, that's a softer way in, isn't it? I think, yes. And so then our next one, Q or P.
Persuade. A lot of times we say, okay, now that we know that this person is saying that they're suicidal, how do I help them to help themselves? And the best way to do that is saying, are you willing to say, let's go to the local behavioral health hospital and get them the attention right away that they need, or call a crisis lifeline that we have here in northern Kentucky with North Keys crisis line, to say, let's reach out to someone and let them know we need help now, and not try to set up an appointment that may be 3 or 4 months down the road.
True.
So that's the best way, is being able to take them to get that help. If not, say, will you let me help you find that right resource? And then to sit down with them to go through those resources. And the third best step, as QPR teaches you, is sometimes it's saying, will you promise me not to take your life until we find someone that can help you with your with what you're going through right now, to help you to not hurt the way you're hurting right now.
That shows care. It shows, please, let's just wait this out. I'm going to get you some help. That's a great, great step. So, because the aftermath, and I'm sure you've discovered this in all you do with suicide prevention, the aftermath of not taking action is extreme guilt, probably for the rest of your life.
That's right.
If you thought this could be happening to this person, they could be thinking about it, and you don't act, you don't try to do anything, and then they do it. I'm sure then you've counseled people that, were in that situation. Why didn't I do something?
And you're very right, Lana Kay. It's one of those situations that I never want anyone to be left behind after a suicide saying, I knew something was wrong, and I didn't take that opportunity to reach out to them because I didn't feel like I was equipped to do that, or I thought someone else would do it. And many times we may be in a situation where we are that last contact they have, that last connection to say, I'm tired of hurting, so the only way I can think of to stop this hurt is to end my life. You may be that last person that is there in contact with them, and if you can have the tools to say, I know how to follow through with this and get the help that they need, you're going to feel more relaxed to have an open conversation with them, to take time to listen to them. Don't rush yourself, and don't let them know that our core answer to what we look at for people around us is, do you care? And that's what we all
That's
ask.
true.
Do you care?
That's
And if
so
someone
true.
says
Isn't that
you
true?
care, I think that is something that it speaks volumes.
That may be all that's wrong is they feel that no one cares, no one understands.
That's right.
So that is so important, Larry. Well, do tell us, Larry. Give us what we should be looking for. Give us the symptoms of someone who may be thinking very deeply about taking their life.
Well, I think it all depends if it's an adult or if it's a young person. That has some bearings on it. For an adult, if it's someone that's just lost a job, going through a divorce, someone that's had a traumatic situation or multiple situations, they're higher risk, especially if there's any type of chemical abuse problems, any substance abuse problems, as well as alcoholism, anything that goes hand in hand with them going through any type of depression definitely lets them be higher. They're a higher risk of doing harm to themselves. But for young people, it can be a lot of things with grades. It can be with they're isolated, that they just don't feel like anybody gets it anymore. They don't get me. They don't understand me as a person. And a lot of times they just don't feel like they belong. And sometimes it can be a breakup with a boyfriend or a girlfriend.
Oh yes, yes, they're very, very, very susceptible to that at that age.
That's right.
So don't you see now? When and I know I'm older than you, but when I was young, people didn't do that over breakups. We sort of knew that that may happen, and so what now in this new world? Because there's not as much camaraderie. It's just sort of them and the other texting, and they're become their world. Instead of like in our day, we had all of those other go play ball in the let's get a ball game together. Could that be some of this?
That is a large part of it. There is a huge disconnect in our society today. And that disconnect comes from, like you said, texting with the cell phones. So many people are glued to their cell phones that their cell phones actually becomes a better friend to them than the people around them. And if someone is struggling and feels isolated and just really hurting, whether it's mentally, emotionally, or physically, or a combination, then they're going to be thinking, well, nobody's talking to me. Nobody cares. Nobody's coming over to say anything to me. And back in our day when we were younger, we went out and played ball together. We'd done a lot of physical activities.
We had other things to go do.
Yes.
To not just obsess.
That's right.
Over this has happened.
Build relationships.
Sure we did. What else, Larry, can you think of? That's so important.
I think that it is so important for us to realize that as people, we want that relationship. We were made to be relational. So in thinking that, always put yourself in the other person's shoes to say, okay, if I see someone that is sitting by themselves in the cafeteria at school, do I take the initiative to walk over and talk to that person? I think a lot of times we hold back and we don't trust our instincts and just to follow through and say, I want to show that person I care, that I want to get to know you a little bit better. And it's something that I think our young people are losing that connection with one another, that I hope that we will see that trend changing, that people will learn to go face to face and interact with each other to let people know I do care.
Right.
There is so much to live for in this world.
Oh, yes.
And I think that has changed. And studies have even showed, as you were talking about your day and our days, that a 23-year-old today thinks the same way as far as their maturity level as a 17 or 18-year-old did 20 years ago. So even those kids that are going to college that are becoming adults,
that's true,
they are struggling because their maturity level hasn't got to that point to make those adult decisions when they're left on their own.
Right.
And so we need to take that all into consideration and say it is a different world that we live in. It's not the same as it was back in our days.
No. And it's contributed to a lot of problems for our youth. And so, Larry, we talked earlier about if they're talking about it, they're not going to do it. You give us your
Well,
take
actually,
on that.
Someone that has, as we always use the phrase, crying wolf, someone that is crying wolf saying that I might as well kill myself, I might as well give up on life, makes those type of statements, we need to realize that they are many times more likely to eventually take their life than the general population. And one study even said it could be as much as 45%, I mean,
Wow.
47 times more likely to take their life eventually, because there gets to that point that they say that I'm going to do this, that people say, oh, that's just them. But
They're just talking.
it gets to a point that nobody does anything when they say it one time, and then they'll say, I knew it, see, nobody cares. And then that one time when they're really low with their self-esteem, their depression, everything is just snowballed to a point that they're saying, I don't know if anybody cares anymore about what's going on with my life, that's when they say, the only way I can get out of this is take my life. And that's a sad situation when we find someone get to that point that they can't find something that says life is worth living another day.
When people that don't understand suicide, they don't realize these people are in so much pain and torment by the time they come to do this. It's an unnatural act. Um, it's just hard for us who don't suffer, whose life is pretty much skating along, to realize what dark, tormented pain they're in. They really feel like, I can't go on. It's that bad.
It is.
Isn't it? And so, Larry, what about if you notice they're starting to get rid of some prized possessions? And
that's another key thing. If someone's starting to get their affairs in order and are starting to give away prized possessions, one of the key things at that point, Lana Kay, is we need to let our viewers know that's the time you need to question that. Why are you doing that? Why is that this something you're giving away when I know how valuable it is to you? And by asking the questions, we can open up that door and find out more of what's going on.
Sure.
On the surface, we're saying, oh, this is a nice gesture that someone's given me this. But when you really stop and say, but why are you doing this? We realize there's a whole lot underneath the surface that we don't see if we just say, oh, thank you for that gift. I really appreciate it.
Right.
So
if you're
ask
sort
questions.
of wondering, this is pretty out of character.
That's right.
Normally this is, he thinks this is the greatest, she thinks it's the greatest, and suddenly they're giving it to you. Red flag.
That's exactly right.
Big red flag. Okay, now they're feeling that they're trapped. You've talked about this, desperate. They're a burden on others. This can be elderly.
That's right.
I think elderly it doesn't cross their mind. I don't want to be a burden anymore.
With the elderly, a lot of people don't realize with the elderly that there is one completed suicide for every 4 attempts. So you're thinking, okay, that's a pretty high rate of completed suicides to the attempts. When you look at a young person, a teenager and young adult, that number is more of one completed suicide for every 100 to 200 attempts. So you're saying, when it comes to our elderly, a lot of times when they've lost their spouse, they're now having to be taken care of. A lot of times they do think they're a burden. They're just financially a burden. They're just taking up space that that the family needs, and so they say, you'd be better off without me. So I think that's what we have to be careful about with our even our elderly population, that they have such a high ratio of attempts to completed suicide.
Oh, yes. So, these statistics are just so great. And Larry, we're almost out of time. You have opened our eyes today about, suicide, this important topic. And Larry, before we go, tell our viewers about the QPR program and that you can come and be a facilitator for their organization, their group. Tell us who you address, Larry, and who you'll be glad to address.
With me personally, I really am passionate about this topic. And so what I try to do with each organization, business, school, first responders, whoever it is that reaches out and says, I'd like our staff to be trained on suicide prevention. Would you come out and talk to us and give us the training? I always gear the training toward the group of people that I'm working with, so they see the relevance of why they need suicide prevention in their field. And I can't stress enough how important it is. Anytime you interact with people, just in general, you need to know in the back of your mind that if this person is really at a point that they're ready to break mentally with their hurt and what's going on, that we need to say, am I prepared to step in and help that person? So if your organization or agency, company, school, whatever it may be, if you're interested in the QPR training, I just ask for you to reach out to me and contact me and let me know. We'll come up with a date that works for everybody, that I can come out to your facility and do the training with your staff. And it's something that takes at least an hour, but it also can go longer if you want to do role playing and make it a little bit more extensive, the knowledge you gain.
Larry, thank you so much for opening our eyes today, for being with us, for talking to us about this important topic that many of us don't know near enough about. If you can get the chance, go to the QPR. I did. I learned so much. He is a great facilitator. You've been listening to Larry Mcnabb today, Vice Chairman of the Kentucky Suicide Prevention Group. Until next time, you be happy and you keep smiling, and I'll see you soon.